The river was swollen with summer rain, its surface rippling beneath the moon. A fisherman from a small village in Joseon walked home late, his shoulders heavy with the day's catch. The night was quiet, except for the croak of frogs and the occasional splash of carp. He paused to rest beside the bank, listening to the sound of water licking against the stones. Then he heard it. Soft laughter. At first, he thought it was a girl from the village, perhaps bathing or gathering reeds. But when he turned, he saw a figure in the mist. A woman stood waist-deep in the current, her white hanbok clinging to her body, her black hair spread like ink across the water. She lifted one pale hand and beckoned him closer. Her smile was gentle, shy, like that of a lover waiting in secret. The fisherman's heart ached with longing he could not explain. He stepped forward, the mud sucking at his feet. The water reached his knees, then his thighs. The woman's laughter grew sweeter, carrying on the mist. When dawn broke, his boat was found adrift, tangled in reeds. On the sand were footprints, small, bare, unmistakably female, that led back into the river and vanished beneath its surface. This was the mark of Seongak-gwi, the water ghost, the drowned woman who lures men to their deaths not with claws or fangs, but with beauty and longing. Origins of Seongak-gwi. The legend of Seongak-gwi belongs to Korea's deep tradition of ghostly lore, woven from shamanic belief, Buddhist imagery, and centuries of life lived beside rivers and seas. The name itself varies in local telling, but always it denotes a female spirit bound to water, most often the soul of a woman who drowned before her time. Water, in Korean cosmology, is not only life-giving, but dangerous. It is a boundary, a shifting threshold between the living and the dead. It nourishes rice fields and carries trade, but it also swallows ships, drags children into currents, and steals husbands from their wives. To die in water was to die unclean, the body denied proper burial, the soul left restless. The Seongak-gwi emerges from this tension. She is the drowned woman who cannot cross fully into the afterlife. Instead, she clings to the riverbank, haunting the threshold between worlds. But she does not appear as a corpse. She appears as desire, the feminine form of the ghost. In Joseon society, women were often bound by roles of modesty, devotion, and silence. Yet, in folklore, female spirits frequently take on forms of power and terror. The Seongak-gwi continues this pattern. She embodies both the ideal and the nightmare of femininity. Her clothing? Almost always a white hanbok, the color of mourning and death in Korea. To see a woman in white by the river was to see a soul not at rest. Her hair, long and loose, streaming down her back or floating on the water. In life, women wore their hair tied. In death, it flowed unbound, a sign of chaos and spirits. Her beauty, flawless, ethereal, touched by moonlight. She does not terrify at first glance. She draws you closer, step by step, until escape is impossible. Unlike monsters that show their horror openly, the Seongak-gwi hides hers beneath allure. Her femininity is her weapon. Shamanic roots. Before Buddhism, Korea's indigenous shamanism taught that spirits lingered where deaths were violent, unjust, or incomplete. A woman who drowned unmarried, betrayed, or abandoned was especially feared, her soul restless, hungry, envious of the living. Shamans performed rituals along rivers to appease such ghosts, offering rice wine, food, and prayers to keep them from luring men away. The Seongak-gwi may be seen as a shamanic water spirit, transformed over time into a personalized ghost story. Her seductive aspect reflects not only fear of drowning, but fear of unfulfilled women, those denied family, children, or honor in life, who now take revenge in death. Buddhist influence. Buddhism layered new meaning onto these tales. In Buddhist cosmology, attachment is the root of suffering. A woman who cannot release her desire for companionship, love, or vengeance becomes trapped as a ghost. The Seongak-gwi is attachment incarnate. She clings not only to the water, but to the living men she cannot stop pursuing. She is a reminder that desire, ungoverned, leads to ruin, not only for her, but for those she touches. Early records and oral tradition. While written records of Seongak-gwi are sparse compared to Japanese or Chinese counterparts, echoes of her appear in Joseon period folklore collections and oral traditions pass through villages. Fishermen in particular shared warnings. Never go near the river at night if you hear laughter. Never answer when a woman calls your name from the water. And never follow beauty into mist. This consistency of warnings suggests a tale deeply rooted in daily life. Korea's geography, filled with rivers, coasts, and wetlands, made water a constant companion and a constant threat. To wrap that threat in the image of a woman was to make it unforgettable, a story that carried both fear and fascination. Why she endures. The Seongak-gwi survives in memory because she represents something more than drowning. She is the danger of desire itself. To see her is to face the truth that beauty can kill, that love can conceal death, and that what we long for may drag us beneath the surface. Her legend whispers across centuries. Be careful whom you follow into the night, for the water holds not only fish and reeds, but the arms of the dead.
Water in Korean folklore is never neutral. It nourishes fields, carries boats, quenches thirst, but it also hides depths, currents, and spirits waiting beneath. When water is combined with the image of a woman, the effect becomes doubly charged, life-giving and life-taking, alluring and deadly. The Seongak-gwi embodies this paradox, transforming water itself into a stage for seduction. The feminine allure of rivers and seas. Throughout the Joseon era, rivers and seas were described in feminine terms. The currents were compared to flowing hair, the tides to breathing, the moon's reflection to a woman's eye. To live beside water was to feel constantly as though it whispered, inviting you closer. The Seongak-gwi's body is inseparable from this imagery. She does not merely stand in the river, she is the river. Her loose black hair spreads across the surface like dark kelp. Her hanbok billows with the current, making her form appear both solid and fluid, flesh and water intertwined. Men who saw her described her not just as beautiful, but as impossible to separate from the river itself. In this sense, she is not only a ghost in water, she is water given a woman's form. White hanbok, the garment of death. The Seongak-gwi is almost always described wearing a white hanbok. In Korean culture, white was the color of purity, but also of mourning. Funeral shrouds were white, mourners wore white robes, ancestral rites were performed with offerings draped in white cloth. To see a woman in white at night was to feel unease. Was she a mourner, a spirit, or death itself cloaked in modest elegance? The eroticism of this whiteness lies in its dual meaning. It suggests innocence, purity, untouched youth, and simultaneously it signals death, the grave, and corruption. This paradox makes her image irresistible. She is at once the virgin and the corpse, the bride and the ghost. Hair as a symbol. In life, women of Joseon tied their hair. Loose hair was considered improper, wild, or dangerous, associated with shamans, madness, or death. But the Seongak-gwi always appears with her hair loose, streaming like black silk down her back or floating on the water. This image carries both sensuality and horror. Long hair has always been a symbol of feminine beauty in East Asia, a mark of health, youth, and erotic appeal. Yet when unbound in death, it signals chaos. To see her hair loose upon the river is to see a woman both alive with beauty and marked as otherworldly. The erotic tension is heightened by this detail. The very thing that makes her attractive also confirms her as a ghost. The invitation of the shore. Water is always a threshold. To stand at the edge of a river is to be half in one world and half in another. The Seongak-gwi uses this threshold as her stage. She rarely appears in the middle of the river. Instead, she lingers near the shallows, where a man can wade without fear, where the line between land and water blurs. She beckons from this liminal space, her feet hidden, her body half submerged. The illusion is clear. You are safe. You can step just a little further. But each step drags the man deeper until the current takes him. The seduction lies not in sudden leaps, but in gradual surrender, like desire itself, which begins with one small step and ends with drowning. Laughter and song. The Seongak-gwi is often said to laugh softly, like rippling water. Sometimes she sings, old folk melodies, fragments of lullabies, or words carried by the wind. These sounds are never harsh or frightening. They're sweet, delicate, almost comforting. But the comfort is the danger. For to hear a woman's laughter by a river at midnight is to hear death disguised as joy. To follow that voice is to follow your own undoing. Erotic death. The fusion of desire and drowning. Why is the Seongak-gwi so often described in terms of seduction rather than terror? The answer lies in the way death and desire intertwine in human imagination. To drown in her arms is not to be torn apart, but to be embraced. Her victims are not mutilated, they are taken silently, their last moments filled with the sensation of intimacy. Men speak of her lips cold as the river's surface, her hands soft as silk before they turn to drag them under. This makes her more terrifying than monsters of claws and teeth. She does not kill through violence, she kills through pleasure mistaken for safety. Her eroticism is her weapon, and her drowning is the consummation of that intimacy. The Eternal Bride. Some interpretations claim that the Seongak-gwi is the soul of a woman who drowned before marriage. In Joseon society, this was considered a tragedy. A woman denied her role as wife and mother. Her ghost, therefore, seeks to fulfill what life denied her. She allures men as lovers, but the union she offers is not life, it is death. She becomes the eternal bride of the river, and every man who follows her becomes her groom, wed not in a wedding chamber, but beneath the waves. Why her image endures. The eroticism of water lies in its duality. It cleanses, but it also consumes. To bathe is to be reborn. To drown is to be destroyed. The Seongak-gwi fuses these contradictions into one image. She is the woman in white who waits at the shore. Her hair is both beautiful and damning. Her laughter is both joyous and fatal. Her touch is both tender and annihilating. To see her is to know that the line between love and death is as thin as the mist that hovers over the river. The Seongak-gwi never charges, never lunges from the water with claws bared. Unlike beasts or demons, she requires no brute force. Her strength lies in patience, in the quiet theater of suggestion. Each gesture, each ripple of the river is part of her performance. She does not seize her victims. She allows them to seize themselves. The stillness of waiting. Witnesses and storytellers often describe her first appearance as utterly still. She stands waist-deep in the water, her hands at her sides, or lightly resting on her robe, her eyes downcast as though she were shy. This stillness is crucial. It makes her seem approachable, fragile, in need of rescue. In Joseon culture, where modesty was prized, a woman's hesitation or silence was considered alluring. To see a figure so still, bathed in moonlight, was to read her as virtuous, innocent. The man did not fear her. He pitied her, or desired her, or both. Gestures of invitation. When she does move, it is subtle, a tilt of the head, a lift of the hand, the soft curl of fingers as if beckoning. These are small signs, but in the charged silence of midnight, they echo like thunder. The most dangerous gesture is the slow retreat. She steps backward in the current, glancing over her shoulder as if afraid to go alone. To the man watching, this is irresistible. She seems to ask him to follow, to protect her, to share in her vulnerability. Step by step, he wades deeper, believing himself the pursuer, when in truth, he is the pursued. The power of voice. Sometimes she speaks, but never in long sentences, never in conversation. Her voice is soft, barely audible above the lapping water. A single word. Come. A question. Are you alone? A phrase. Don't leave me here. More often she laughs. Not shrill, not mocking, but warm, girlish, almost embarrassed. The laugh of a woman meeting a lover in secret. For a lonely sailor or soldier, this sound is unbearable. It pulls at every memory of companionship, of intimacy denied. Illusions of familiarity. Folklore tells that the Seongak-gwi can appear not only as a stranger, but as someone known. A fisherman might see his wife waiting by the river, though she had died years before. A soldier might glimpse the courtesan he had left behind in the city. A monk might hear the voice of his mother calling him home. This imitation is her cruelest trick. The man does not think he is meeting a ghost. He believes he is meeting love reborn. He does not suspect danger, for danger wears the face of his deepest longing. In this way, the Seongak-gwi weaponizes memory itself. The seduction of silence. More terrifying than words or laughter is her silence. A man walking by the river hears only his footsteps, the croak of frogs, the splash of carp. Then he sees her, silent, waiting, watching. Silence is never neutral in the dark. It magnifies the heartbeat, sharpens the imagination, turns every gesture into a question. Her refusal to speak forces the man to supply his own story. She must be lost. She must need help. She must be waiting for him. The truth is simpler. She waits for nothing. She waits for him. The illusion of safety. The Seongak-gwi rarely appears in the middle of violent waters. Instead, she stands in calm shallows, where the current is gentle and the depth no higher than a man's thigh. Everything about the scene whispers safety. The man tells himself, I can wade in and back again. She is only a few steps away. But rivers are treacherous. The bed is soft, the mud clings, the current stronger than it seems. One more step, and the water rises. another, and the current tugs. By the time he realizes the danger, her cold hands are already on his arms. The embrace of death. The final act of seduction comes when he is close enough to touch. She reaches out, not with violence, but with tenderness. Her hands rest on his shoulders, her hair brushes his cheek, her lips hover near his. It feels like the moment before a kiss, the climax of intimacy. But then her grip tightens. Her skin grows cold. Her eyes darken. The kiss never comes. Instead, she pulls, and the river takes him. The betrayal is not in the drowning. It is in the denial of the kiss. The promise of love withheld, replaced by silence and water. Patience as power. What sets the Seongak-gwi apart is her patience. She does not rush. She does not scream. She waits. She knows men will undo themselves if given time. Her seduction is a mirror held up to human weakness, to longing that overpowers reason. She is not a predator in the ordinary sense. She is a stage, and the victim writes his own doom upon it. The subtle terror. The horror of her methods lies not in monstrosity, but in subtlety. She never looks grotesque until the final moment. She is beautiful, quiet, patient. Her gestures are those of a lover, a wife, a mother, a friend. This is why the Seongak-gwi terrifies so deeply. She does not force herself upon you. She waits for you to step willingly into her arms. And when you do, she does not take your body alone. She takes your desire, your memory, your trust.
The Seongak-gwi is not indiscriminate. She does not drag every passerby into the depths. Instead, the folklore paints her as strangely selective, targeting men whose hearts and bodies are already burdened. To understand her legend, we must examine not only who she was, but who her victims were. The fishermen. The most frequent prey of Seongak-gwi were fishermen. Their lives were bound to the sea and rivers, working before dawn, returning long after dusk. Exhaustion, hunger, loneliness, all pressed against them like waves. When a fisherman walked home late, his body heavy from rowing, his spirit weary, the sight of a beautiful woman waiting by the river was unbearable. It felt like a miracle. After hours of wet nets and the stink of fish, here was softness, warmth, laughter. But this was precisely her trap. The fisherman, used to the rhythm of the tide, trusted water too much. He waded in, thinking he knew its secrets. But no spill could save him from her embrace, for she was not current alone. She was death disguised as longing. In villages, when a fisherman vanished, neighbors whispered, "He followed the woman in the river." The wives of fishermen often left offerings of rice cakes or coins near the shore, pleading with the ghost not to take their husbands. The soldiers. In times of war and patrols along borders, lonely soldiers were also vulnerable. Separated from their homes, carrying the weight of battle and fear, they longed not only for rest, but for tenderness. For them, the Seongak-gwi often appeared not as a stranger, but as someone they missed, a sweetheart from the village, a courtesan from the capital, even a wife left behind. The soldier, hardened by swords and blood, felt his heart soften at the sight of her. He laid down his weapon, convinced he was granted a night of comfort. But by dawn, his post was empty, his armor washed downstream. His comrades muttered of cowardice or desertion, but the elders knew he had been claimed by the river bride. The wandering merchants. Merchants traveling long roads often camped by rivers or ports. Isolated, carrying wealth, but little companionship, they were easy prey. Folklore tells of merchants who, drunk on rice wine, stumbled to the shore and saw her standing among reeds. For them, the danger was twofold: greed and desire. Accustomed to bargains and exchanges, they thought her invitation was another transaction, something to be enjoyed quickly, with no consequence. But the Seongak-gwi cannot be bought. She drains not gold, but breath, not coin, but spirit. By morning, the merchant's goods remained, but his body was gone, and the river claimed another soul. The monks. Even monks were not immune. For men sworn to chastity and detachment, the Seongak-gwi was the ultimate test. Tales tell of monks traveling alone, hearing voices by the river that sounded like their mothers or sisters, calling them home. Other stories claim she appeared as a distressed woman, begging for help. The monk, moved by compassion, stepped into the water to aid her. Only then did she reveal her ghostly nature, pulling him down. The presence of monks in these tales reveals a deeper lesson: that no man, no matter how disciplined, is free from temptation. Even spiritual guardians could fall if they mistook longing for duty. The drunkard and the lonely. Beyond specific groups, the Seongak-gwi often targeted men who were drunk, grieving, or broken-hearted. Wine blurred judgment. Grief made them desperate. Heartbreak made them reckless. A widower who still mourned his wife might see her form in the mist and follow willingly, believing the gods had granted him one more night. A drunkard might laugh at the sight of her and stumble into the water, only to vanish in silence. In these tales, the Seongak-gwi is less a predator, more a mirror. She reflects the man's weakness, his longing, his wounds. She gives him what he wants most, and in that gift lies his undoing. The psychology of vulnerability. What unites these victims is not profession, but vulnerability. Each carried within them a hunger that outweighed caution. The fisherman hungered for warmth after endless cold nights. The soldier hungered for love after endless marches. The merchant hungered for pleasure to balance endless trade. The monk hungered, secretly, for human closeness despite vows. The widower or drunkard hungered for the past, for comfort, for escape. The Seongak-gwi did not create their desire. She revealed it. She gave it form and let it destroy them. The warning to society. By painting these victims as victims, folklore also served as a warning. The tales reminded listeners that excess desire, whether for wealth, for wine, for love, or for memory, could drag a person under. The Seongak-gwi was not only a ghost, she was consequence embodied. Children were told the stories so they would not stray near rivers at night. Wives repeated them so their husbands would not wander after curfew. And men whispered them to one another, half in fear, half in fascination, acknowledging that they too might fall if they heard laughter on the water. The intimacy of her choice. The most chilling element of her selection is how personal it seems. She does not kill in rage like other spirits. She chooses. She waits for the right man at the right hour in the right state of weakness. To be chosen by her is both flattering and fatal. It means that death has studied you, learned your desires, and come wearing their shape. The Seongak-gwi does not strike like a sword. Her violence is not sudden, but slow, intimate, almost tender. Men who encountered her did not die with screams on their lips. They died with sighs, with the soft ache of desire mingled with dread. To understand her power, one must see not only how she lured, but how she ended. The first touch. Those who came close enough to touch her often described the moment as strangely comforting. Her hand, pale and slender, rested lightly on a man's wrist. Her lips, though cold, brushed against his cheek as if in greeting. For a heartbeat, it felt like reunion. A lost lover returned, a night of warmth restored. But then the illusion cracked. Her skin grew clammy, her eyes darkened, her breath chilled. The warmth that comforted was replaced by a cold that seeped into the marrow. The man realized too late that her touch was not a gift, but a weight, dragging him down. The kiss of water. Folklore often speaks of the poisonous kiss of the Seongak-gwi. Unlike the fiery lust of Western succubi, her kiss is not passion, but drowning. Her lips press to his, and with that contact, water fills him, not literally but spiritually. His chest grows heavy, his breath falters. He feels the river inside his lungs as though he is inhaling the current itself. The kiss is both intimacy and execution, the seal of death disguised as love. Some storytellers describe the man collapsing instantly, his body limp in her arms. Others say he walks into the water willingly, holding her close as though afraid to lose her, until the current takes both beneath the surface. The descent. The act of drowning is rarely fast. The river swirls, the body thrashes, but in tales of the Seongak-gwi, the descent is oddly quiet. The man does not cry out, he surrenders. Neighbors who claim to have witnessed such scenes describe only the ripple of water and the faint sound of laughter carried on the mist. By morning, the river is calm, as though nothing has happened. Yet when the body is found days later, it bears no wounds, no sign of struggle. The victim appears peaceful, almost as if asleep. This uncanny serenity only deepens the horror, for it suggests that he did not resist, that he went willingly to her embrace. The emptiness she leaves. Unlike bloodthirsty demons, the Seongak-gwi does not mutilate. Her cruelty lies in what she takes: vitality, breath, presence. The families who bury her victims remark on their pallor, the emptiness of their eyes, the strange calm of their features. It is as if the body remains, but the spirit has been stolen. In some villages, people whispered that she consumed not flesh, but memory, that the drowned man's laughter, his love, his very essence of life became part of her, fueling her allure for the next victim. Rare escapes. Though most tales end in death, a handful speak of survivors. These stories reveal both her limits and the cultural lessons behind her legend. The name spoken aloud. Some say that if a man recognized her as a ghost and shouted her name, she would vanish, unable to endure the exposure. The dawn's protection. Others claim that if he resisted until sunrise, her power faded with the mist. The first light of morning revealed her true form, hollowed-eyed, dripping, skeletal, before she dissolved into the foam. The monk's prayer. One tale speaks of a monk who clasped his hands and chanted sutras when she touched him. She recoiled, shrieking like wind through reeds, before disappearing into foam. But these escapes are rare. Most men lack the clarity, the faith, or the courage to resist her pull. Desire is stronger than reason in the silence of night. The survivor's curse. Those who lived to tell the tale were never the same. Survivors spoke of her eyes in every pool of water, of her laughter carried on the rain. Some refused to bathe, drink, or even walk near rivers again. Others confessed with shame that they longed to see her again. Though they knew she was death, they could not forget her beauty, the tenderness of her touch, the promise of intimacy she embodied. These men lived haunted not by terror alone, but by desire that refused to die. In this way, even survival was a kind of curse. To live, but forever empty,
yearning for the embrace that nearly killed them. The cultural function of her endings. The tales of her drownings were not merely horror for its own sake, they functioned as warnings, carrying practical and moral lessons. To fishermen, do not overstay by the river after dark. To soldiers, do not abandon discipline for desire. To monks, beware the temptations that unravel vows. To widowers, accept loss rather than chase shadows. By embedding death in seduction, the legend ensured that men would fear not only the water, but their own weaknesses. The quiet horror. What makes the Seongak-gwi unforgettable is not gore, not screams, not monstrous violence. It is the quietness of her end. Men die in silence, in surrender, in what appears almost like love.
The Seongak-gwi is more than a frightening tale told to warn children from riversides. She is a vessel of meaning, a mirror of how Korean culture has understood death, desire, and the thin boundaries between them. To interpret her is to step into the deeper waters of symbolism, where rivers become thresholds, women become mysteries, and longing itself is revealed as fatal. Water as threshold. In Korean cosmology, water is not only an element, but a border. It marks the line between the village and the wild, the safe and the dangerous, the living and the dead. Rivers carry the dead away. Bodies that drown are said to drift toward the underworld. Seas swallow travelers whole, cutting ties with home and kin. Rain cleanses, but also recalls the tears of the departed. The Seongak-gwi embodies this liminality. She is neither fully alive nor fully dead, neither fully woman nor fully water. To encounter her is to stand on the edge of two worlds, unsure which one you belong to. Femininity and mystery. Why is the water ghost almost always female? In Joseon society, women were associated with the home, with silence, with restraint. Yet in folklore, women often appear as spirits who resist these limits, breaking boundaries through supernatural presence. The Seongak-gwi is the perfect inversion of social expectation. In life, she may have been voiceless. In death, her laughter lures men to doom. In life, she may have been confined to land. In death, she rules the water. In life, she was judged by purity. In death, she weaponizes that purity, appearing in white hanbok as both bride and corpse. Her femininity becomes both attraction and terror, an embodiment of the belief that desire itself is unknowable, ungovernable, and ultimately destructive. The ghost of unfinished life. Many Korean ghost tales describe spirits of women who died unmarried, childless, or betrayed. The Seongak-gwi is often said to be one such soul, drowned before fulfilling her expected roles. In this interpretation, her seduction is not only vengeance, but hunger, the hunger of an unfinished life. She lures men not simply to kill, but to complete what she was denied. In her embrace, death becomes the consummation of an unfulfilled marriage. The river is her wedding chamber, the drowned man, her unwilling groom. Desire and detachment. From a Buddhist lens, the Seongak-gwi is a warning against attachment. Her clinging nature, bound to water, bound to men, reflects the karmic weight of unfulfilled desire. She cannot move on because she cannot release. The men who follow her are mirrors of her own failure. They too cannot release their longing for love, for comfort, for reunion. In this way, the story is not only about her seduction,
but about the fatal symmetry between the ghost and the victim. Both are destroyed by what they refuse to let go. The house without hearth. In some tales, the Seongak-gwi conjures illusions of a home, lanterns glowing by the water, the outline of a warm room, the smell of rice wine. These illusions unravel by dawn, revealed as reeds and mist. This image carries deep cultural weight. The home in Korean tradition was sacred, a place of ancestors, hearth, continuity. To discover it false, to find its warmth only a trick of the ghost, was to confront the terror of instability, of betrayal at the very heart of safety. The symbolism of silence. Her silence, often more frightening than her laughter, is also symbolic. In Joseon culture, silence could be modesty, obedience, even virtue. But in her case, silence is predatory. She waits without words, letting the victim's own imagination betray him. This reflects a broader theme in East Asian aesthetics, the power of suggestion over expression, of absence over presence. The Seongak-gwi weaponizes that cultural aesthetic. Her faceless silence is not empty. It is full, overflowing with danger. A social mirror. Finally, the Seongak-gwi reflects anxieties about gender, class, and survival in Joseon society. Fishermen feared her because their work put them at her mercy. Soldiers feared her because they carried loneliness. Merchants feared her because wealth could not protect them from desire. In all these cases, she represents not only a supernatural threat, but a social truth. Vulnerability is universal. No class, no discipline, no wealth can shield a man from longing, or from the ghost that turns longing into death. Why the symbol endures? Because she contains a lesson larger than superstition. The Seongak-gwi teaches that desire and destruction are bound together, that longing for what is lost may drown you, and that beauty can conceal the gravest danger. She whispers across generations, the river is not only water. The woman in white is not only love. The silence at night is not only peace. All of these may be death, waiting with a smile.
Legends of women bound to water are not unique to Korea. Across the world, cultures have imagined feminine figures who rise from rivers, seas, and lakes to seduce, deceive, and destroy. Yet while parallels abound, from Japan's Yuki-onna to Europe's drowning maidens, the Seongak-gwi retains qualities that are distinct, deeply rooted in Korean soil. To understand her power, we must set her alongside her sisters in myth and examine what unites them and what sets her apart. Japanese counterparts, Yuki-onna and Nopperabo. Japan offers some of the most famous female spirits, many of whom share traits with the Seongak-gwi. Yuki-onna, the snow woman, like the Seongak-gwi, is both alluring and lethal. She seduces travelers with her beauty and kills with her icy breath. Yet while Yuki-onna embodies excess, her danger lies in overwhelming cold, in sensation turned fatal. The Seongak-gwi, by contrast, embodies absence. She is not storm, but silence, not freezing breath, but drowning stillness. Nopperabo, the faceless woman. The faceless woman terrifies by erasure. She appears beautiful until the moment her face vanishes into smooth blankness. Like the Seongak-gwi, she thrives on intimacy betrayed, but where the faceless woman horrifies by stripping away humanity, the Seongak-gwi horrifies by replacing life with water. One removes the face, the other replaces the breath. These Japanese spirits emphasize extremes: cold, emptiness, transformation. The Seongak-gwi, however, emphasizes inevitability, the quiet pull of the river, the certainty of drowning, the surrender to longing. Chinese fox spirits, Hulijing. China's Hulijing, the fox spirit, is perhaps the closest cousin in terms of seduction. These shapeshifters take the form of beautiful women, luring men into relationships that drain their vitality. Yet the fox spirit deceives through disguise, concealing her animal nature. The Seongak-gwi does not disguise herself. She appears as she is, a woman in white, bound to the river. Her trick is not transformation, but recognition. She appears familiar not because she has stolen another's face, but because she reflects the man's own memory, his own longing. This difference reveals cultural nuance. The Chinese fox spirit warns against deception by others. The Korean Seongak-gwi warns against deception by oneself. Korean Kumiho. Closer to home, the Kumiho, the nine-tailed fox of Korea, also seduces men and consumes their hearts or livers. She is overtly predatory, her beauty a mask for animal hunger. The Seongak-gwi, however, is subtler. She does not consume flesh, but breath, not organs, but vitality. Where the Kumiho leaves behind bloodied corpses, the Seongak-gwi leaves peaceful shells, as if the man had simply fallen asleep. The contrast highlights two sides of Korean fear: the violent predator and the silent lover, the beast with fangs and the ghost with a kiss. European water spirits, Rusalki and Lorelei. In Eastern Europe, the Rusalka, the spirit of a drowned maiden, haunts rivers and lakes, luring men with song and beauty. She is perhaps the clearest European analogue to the Seongak-gwi. Both arise from tragic deaths, both appear beautiful, both lure with tenderness, both kill with water. But even here, differences stand out. The Rusalka is often depicted as malicious, laughing at her victims, pulling them down with glee. The Seongak-gwi, however, is quieter, more mournful. Her allure is tinged with sorrow, her silence heavy with longing. She kills not with laughter, but with absence. The German Lorelei, who sits on cliffs singing sailors to their deaths, also parallels the Seongak-gwi. Yet again, the difference lies in method. The Lorelei overwhelms with song, the Seongak-gwi overwhelms with silence. The succubus and vampiric brides. In Western myth, the succubus embodies lust incarnate, draining men in their sleep through fiery encounters. Similarly, vampiric brides in Slavic folklore lure men with promises of love only to consume them in blood. The Seongak-gwi diverges sharply from these figures. She is never fiery, never bloody. Her seduction is chaste at first glance, a hand beckoning, a smile in the mist, a kiss that is cold rather than hot. She reminds us that intimacy can be fatal even without excess, even without lust, that death may come disguised not as passion, but as comfort. The uniqueness of Seongak-gwi. Placed among her global sisters, the Seongak-gwi's uniqueness becomes clear. She is not storm like Yukiona, nor emptiness like Noperabo, nor animal like Kumiho. She is not deception like the Hulijing, nor passion like the succubus, nor bloodlust like the vampiric bride. She is inevitability, the certainty of water, the inevitability of death, clothed in tenderness. Her story is not about being tricked by another. It is about being undone by oneself, by one's own longing, one's own desire to believe in beauty at the river's edge. The lesson across cultures. Every seductive ghost carries a lesson. The Yukiana warns that beauty can freeze you. The Noperabo warns that faces can vanish. The Kumiho warns that lust can consume you. The Hulijing warns that appearances deceive. The Rusalka warns that grief breeds vengeance. The succubus warns that passion can drain life. But the Seongak-gwi warns something darker, that the one who calls you with love may not exist at all. That what you long for most may be nothing more than the river itself, waiting to claim you.
Legends do not remain trapped in the past. They shift, adapt, and breathe through each generation. The Seongak-gwi, once whispered about in fishing villages and recorded in fragments of Joseon folklore, has not disappeared. Instead, she has transformed, sliding quietly into modern literature, film, television, and digital folklore. Though centuries separate us from the villagers who first told her story, her silhouette still waits in the mist. In literature and folklore collections. In the early 20th century, as Korea underwent colonization and modernization, folklorists began collecting oral tales from rural communities. Among the stories of tokabei, goblins, guishin, ghosts, and mountain spirits, references to drowned women resurfaced. While sometimes merged with broader categories of water spirits, the Seongak-gwi remained distinct, a ghost that seduced, not attacked, that lured, not hunted. Contemporary Korean writers, particularly those working in horror and gothic fiction, have reimagined her as a metaphor for grief and longing. Short stories depict her not only by rivers, but in urban canals, reservoirs, even public fountains, wherever water becomes a quiet threshold. On the screen, K-horror. Korean cinema has thrived on ghost stories, especially those of women wronged in life. Films like A Tale of Two Sisters 2003 and The Red Shoes 2005 popularized the trope of the vengeful female ghost. Though these works do not always name her directly, the DNA of the Seongak-gwi is unmistakable. The long black hair, the white clothing, the silence that precedes terror. Independent horror films and TV dramas occasionally reference drowned maidens explicitly. In ghost anthology series, fishermen whisper of women who beckon from docks. In period dramas, soldiers are warned not to answer voices from rivers. Each time the Seongak-gwi's essence seeps through: beauty, silence, water, death. What distinguishes her in K-horror is subtlety. Where other spirits shriek, she waits. Where others rush with rage, she whispers. This quietness resonates with modern audiences weary of cheap scares. Her terror lies in atmosphere, not spectacle. In manhwa and webtoons, the explosion of Korean comics and digital webtoons has given new life to old ghosts. Artists frequently adapt folklore for horror anthologies, and the Seongak-gwi appears as both tragic heroine and monstrous seductress. Some portray her sympathetically, a young woman betrayed and drowned, cursed to remain in the water she once loved. Others emphasize her cruelty, depicting men dragged into depths by her skeletal hands. In either case, her allure remains central. She is always beautiful, always magnetic, always desired even as she destroys. The urban legend era. The age of the internet has transformed the Seongak-gwi from folklore into urban legend. Korean message boards and horror forums tell new stories of her. Highway riversides,
Drivers at night see a woman in white waving from the Han River, only for her to vanish when they approach. Apartment reservoirs. Tenants claim to hear laughter outside their windows during heavy rain, as if someone waits in the storm. Online games and VR. Creepy indie horror games feature faceless women in water, clearly inspired by her legend. She has even been compared to global internet horror icons like Slender Man. But where Slender Man is faceless and alien, the Seongak-gwi is intimate and familiar. She does not terrify by strangeness, but by recognition, by appearing as the woman you already long for. Why she still terrifies. Why does her legend endure in modern Korea? Because the fears she embodies have not changed. Fear of water. Even in an age of dams and bridges, rivers flood, seas take ships, and drowning remains a real threat. Fear of desire. Loneliness, grief, and longing remain as powerful as ever. People still dream of seeing lost lovers again, even knowing it would hurt. Fear of silence. In a society full of noise and speed, the idea of silence, of something waiting patiently in the shadows, feels even more terrifying. The Seongak-gwi thrives because she preys not on outdated fears, but on universal truths. Water drowns, desire blinds, silence suffocates. The tragic allure. Modern reinterpretations often emphasize her tragedy. She is not merely a killer, but a victim herself, wronged by society, betrayed in love, denied a proper burial. Her vengeance is born from suffering, and her seduction is a desperate attempt to reclaim intimacy stolen by death. This duality fascinates audiences. She is both pitied and feared, both desired and dreaded. In her, we see the eternal paradox of ghostly women. They remind us that love can outlast life, but that such persistence is deadly. A global symbol. As K-culture spreads worldwide, so do its myths. International fans of K-horror encounter her in translations of folklore, adaptations in manhwa, and echoes in cinema. To global audiences, she is Korea's answer to the siren, the rusalka, the banshee, a uniquely Korean fusion of beauty and annihilation. Her story is no longer confined to the banks of Joseon rivers. It now lives in YouTube horror channels, fan art, online novels, and whispered retellings on Reddit. Each new medium reshapes her, but the essence remains, the woman in white, waiting at the edge of the water, offering a smile that hides the grave. And the enduring lesson. The Seongak-gwi endures not because she is loud, but because she is quiet. Her story teaches that death does not always announce itself with screams. Sometimes it waits, softly, with open arms. She is the echo of a lost lover, the dream of reunion, the promise of comfort, and the betrayal that follows when you step too close to the water. And so from Chosun to Seoul, from riversides to message boards, her legend flows like the water she haunts, always moving, always present, always hungry.